Let me tell you, if you'd asked anyone in the city, nobody would have guessed that the most defining moment in Ryan Holden's life, the turning point he never saw coming, would start with something as small as a cleaning lady not showing up for work. I mean, yeah, he was a millionaire CEO, always the sharpest guy in the room, the type who thought discipline and routine were the only secrets to success. You know what I mean? Every morning, same routine, top floor office before sunrise, suit tailored so perfect you could practically see your reflection in the crease, every hair in place. From his desk behind the kind of wood they don't even make anymore, he looked out over the city like he owned it. Because in a way, he did. When his young assistant, Peter, broke the silence that morning to say, "Mrs. Brown hasn't shown up again, sir." Ryan barely looked up. Stuff like that didn't even register. A missed day here, a slip up there, whatever. But he was a stickler for order, hated the idea of people thinking the rules didn't apply, even to the cleaning staff. Still, firing someone over a missed day? In his mind, it was almost beneath him. He asked for her number, mostly to keep the gears running smooth. Never even met her, didn't know her face, just a name on the payroll. When he finally dialed the number, he had his speech all loaded, short, sharp, and to the point, ready to remind her who was in charge. But the voice that answered, not what he expected at all. It wasn't an apology from an overworked employee. It was the tiniest, most uncertain hello he'd ever heard. A little girl's voice so soft he nearly missed it. And right then, it was like time froze. The power in his voice, that certainty he built his empire on, it vanished. He tried to regroup, made his voice softer, asked for Mrs. Brown, and the girl replied, "Mommy can't talk right now. She's really sick." For words, but man, they hit him like a sledgehammer. "We need money," she whispered, offering to come clean herself if that's what it took. Imagine that. A 6-year-old offering to work because her mom's too sick to get out of bed. All the years Ryan spent making tough calls, never blinking at layoffs or mergers, none of it prepared him for this. Shame crept up his neck. He apologized, actually apologized to a kid. He told her not to worry, to let her mom rest. Hung up, and just sat there, staring at his city, wondering how a man could have so much control and still miss something so basic. He could have handed it off, made HR call, ticked a few boxes, kept his hands clean. But for the first time in years, he didn't want to. He canceled every meeting, grabbed his coat, and drove himself, not the company car, not with an entourage, right to the address on file. The neighborhood was nothing like his world. Chipped paint, cracked sidewalks, that stale smell of old coffee and cleaning supplies. When he found the right door, he paused, knuckles in the air, just breathing. He'd never been nervous to knock on a door before. When Mia, the little girl, opened it, her blue eyes wide and wary, Ryan felt his throat tighten. She was dressed in pink, hair messy but clean, looking at him like he might disappear if she blinked. Inside, Mrs. Brown lay on a narrow bed, so pale and tired she looked smaller than he'd imagined. She apologized for missing work, apologized for causing trouble. Can you believe that? A woman on the edge, worried about inconveniencing a guy who'd never even noticed her until now. Mia hovered by her side, trying to look brave, probably expecting him to yell or complain. Instead, Ryan sat down, told her not to worry about the job, promised to make sure they were taken care of. He meant it. He really did. But Mrs. Brown just shook her head. "I don't want charity," she whispered. And you could tell it hurt to even accept help. He tried to explain it wasn't charity, just basic decency. Watching Mia squeeze her mom's hand, seeing her trust him with those big eyes, it got to him, deeper than he expected. He ended up staying all afternoon, listening as Mrs. Brown explained how she'd worked through the flu, collapsed in the hallway, hid it from her daughter, just trying to keep things normal. She kept apologizing, and every time, it chipped away at the wall Ryan had built around himself. He saw how much Mia worried, how much she pretended to be strong. When Mrs. Brown finally drifted off, Mia handed him a coloring book, silent invitation. He took the crayon, colored a flower, and when she declared it perfect, he felt prouder than he had in any boardroom. Later, as he left, Mia stood in the doorway, asked in that quiet voice, Will you come back? He didn't even hesitate. Of course he'd come back. That became their routine. He brought groceries, books, sometimes pastries, whatever made things a little brighter. Mia started waiting for him, running to hug him when he arrived. Mrs. Brown slowly got stronger, started to smile more, asked him about his own life. It wasn't just about help anymore. They became his people. For the first time, Ryan felt like he belonged somewhere that wasn't measured in profits or performance reviews. One evening, as Mia dozed off beside him, Mrs. Brown said quietly, "You don't have to keep coming, you know." He just shook his head. "I want to. I need to." The formalities faded. It wasn't about being his savior, not even close. It was about showing up, letting himself care, and feeling that sense of family he didn't know he'd been missing. When Mia finally asked, "Does that mean you could be our family?" he realized that's exactly what he wanted. No strings attached. He promised he'd come back, and he kept that promise. Every day, not just as a boss, but as a person who'd finally let his heart lead the way. For a man who spent his life believing distance made him strong, Ryan Holden discovered that real strength was letting people in, even when it was messy, even when it hurt. And maybe that's the real twist. It wasn't a story about saving anyone. It was about finding each other, about a little girl who broke through the walls of a powerful man with 4 simple words and a whole lot of quiet hope. So, yeah, that happened. And if you think you know what's right or what justice should look like, let me ask, what would you have done? Would you have walked away, or would you have chosen to stay? Tell me, where do you stand? Is it charity? Is it justice? Or is it just being human? I want to know. So, you want to know what happened next, right? Because, I'll be honest with you, what started as a quick detour in my perfect little routine turned into something I never saw coming. Yeah, I kept showing up, some days with groceries, sometimes just with a story to tell or a few minutes to listen. Funny thing, I started realizing those afternoons in Mrs. Brown's tiny apartment, drinking way too sweet tea while Mia braided her doll's hair on the carpet, meant more to me than any business lunch or boardroom applause ever did. Let me back up a sec. This isn't the kind of story where everything suddenly gets easy or everybody magically heals just because you decide to care. That's not real life, is it? The first few weeks were awkward, to say the least. I kept one foot in my old world, emails, deadlines, all that noise, but the other was in this new place, where time slowed down and my phone stayed silent in my pocket. At the office, people noticed I was distracted. Peter, my assistant, kept asking if I was all right with that wide-eyed look, like I'd lost my edge. Maybe I had. Or maybe I'd just found a new 1.1 afternoon. I brought over a book of fairy tales for Mia. I didn't even realize how much she'd light up, just seeing those colorful pages. She asked me to read to her, first shy, then insistent, then curling up next to me on the couch like we'd been doing it for years. Her mom watched from across the room, her eyes softer, her face a little less drawn. Afterward, Mrs. Brown said, "You know, Ryan, she hasn't really smiled like that in a long time." It hit me then. Sometimes what people need most isn't money or charity. It's just being noticed, being seen. You know what I mean? There were setbacks, of course. Mrs. Brown had days when she was too weak to get out of bed, and I could feel her pride fighting with her gratitude every time I helped. She'd apologize for needing anything, and I'd just sit beside her, holding her hand, promising I wasn't keeping score. One evening, she tried to talk about going back to work, how scared she was to lose her job. I just shook my head and told her, "Take the time you need. We'll figure it out. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time, she actually believed me. There was this one night that really stuck with me. A nasty storm rolled through, thunder shaking the windows, the lights flickering. Mia crawled onto my lap, clutching her blanket, and asked if I could stay until the rain stopped. I did. We played cards on the floor, ate cookies for dinner, and when the power finally went out, I told stories by the glow of my phone flashlight. Mrs. Brown smiled at us from her bed. Her face relaxed in a way I hadn't seen before. That night, when I finally left, Mia whispered, "I wish you could live here." And for a second, I almost wished I could, too. You ever feel like you're living 2 lives? That's how it was for me. One foot in the world I'd built, the other in this messy, beautiful place where I was needed in a way I'd never been before. At work, I caught myself defending the cleaning staff in meetings, pushing for better health benefits, actually listening instead of just nodding along. Margaret, my attorney, cornered me in the hallway one morning. "You're changing, Ryan. People are starting to notice." She didn't mean it as a compliment, but I took it as one anyway. But this isn't a fairy tale, right? Money didn't fix everything. Mrs. Brown had a bad relapse one week, wound up in the hospital. I sat in the waiting room beside Mia for hours, holding her tiny hand while she tried so hard not to cry. I found myself bargaining with the universe. Let her get better, and I'll never take anything for granted again. I meant it too. When Mrs. Brown finally came home, she was thinner, weaker, but she looked at me and said, "You didn't have to stay." I just smiled and replied, "Yeah, but I wanted to." That's simple. Eventually, the boundaries just blurred away. I got in the habit of calling them before big meetings, checking in on Mia's schoolwork, asking if they needed anything before picking up groceries. Mrs. Brown started to laugh again, soft and careful at first, like she was testing if the world would let her. Mia? Well, she became a shadow at my side, slipping her hand into mine whenever we crossed the street, whispering little secrets she didn't share with anyone else. Some nights, when I'd leave, she'd run to the window to wave, and I'd see her silhouette against the lamp, small but fearless. You know, there's this moment when you realize you're not just helping someone, you're letting them help you, too. One Saturday, I found myself telling Mrs. Brown things I'd never told anybody. About how lonely it was at the top, how scared I was of screwing up, how I used to think being needed was just a weakness. She just nodded, her eyes kind and knowing, like she understood exactly what I meant. The twist? I guess it was when I realized I didn't want to go back to who I was before. All that armor I wore, the distance, the cold perfection, it started to feel like a costume I couldn't wait to take off. At work, I caught myself smiling more, listening for people's stories, not just their results. And every evening, as I walked up those cracked steps to Mrs. Brown's apartment, it felt less like a duty and more like going home. The ending? Well, I wish I could say there's some clean resolution. But the truth is, real life doesn't work that way. Mrs. Brown still struggles with her health, and money is always tight. But now, when I walk through that door, I see something I never thought I'd have: family. Not because we share blood, but because we chose each other. Mia calls me her second dad, sometimes, usually when she's sleepy or scared. Mrs. Brown, she finally stopped apologizing for needing help. Sometimes I catch her watching me with a look that says thank you louder than words ever could. And me? I'm still learning, still making mistakes, still showing up, even when I don't know exactly what to say. I'm not a hero, just a guy who finally stopped looking at life from above and started living it right there, in the mess, with the people who matter most. So, I'll ask again, what would you have done? Would you have picked up the phone, or just let it ring? Would you have turned away, or stayed? In the end, I found my answer. Maybe you'll find yours, too. Drop your thoughts below. Is family something you're born with, or something you build? What would you have done if you were me? Let's hear it. Don't hold back.